Welcome to the April Human Rights Commission meeting.
First I want to say thank you to Kenya, because any day I can have catfish is a good day. Catfish, hush puppies, I just need my greens and sweet potato pie. I'm all right. I just wanted to kind of give you some updates on what's been really going on recently with the office and some things that the office and I've been doing. We've been pretty busy. We gave our annual report to City Council, which I think everybody has a copy of. If not, walk down the hall and get a copy of it. Excuse me, you can certainly find it on our website. But the annual report was, I think, extremely well received, to the point where it was nice to see several aha moments on City Council, getting a greater understanding of the depth and breadth of what we do and what equity means, and all the things that the office is involved in, all the things that the connections to the office are involved in, with the Commission on Disability, with HRC, with the CEC, with DEEP, all of those. DEEP is the affinity umbrella affinity groups in the city. So it was just very, very well received, to the point where there was commentary that they were surprised I wasn't asking for, during the budget process, asking for additional staff, because they thought that that would make sense. So I told them I'd be back. So it was just very well received. And in that regard, the budget hearings are going on for all the city bureaus, and just as last year, this year, they each had to complete a budget equity assessment that they completed with their budget and turn in with their budget. And for the first year now, I am sitting at each of those, which makes it a very long day, long days. So sitting at each of those budget hearings for each bureau and asking questions, offering commentary on equity, on their budgets, on their responses to the budgets, and at the instigation of the mayor and a couple of the city council. So that's the first thing. When I comment and talk to other jurisdictions that are trying to do equity work or have a new equity office, that kind of thing, and describe the fact that they're sitting at their budget hearings, they're not only surprised, they're pleased, because it's just a huge step to really enforce equity in a city's budget. You want to know what's important to a city, follow the money. And so that's really what this is about. And in that regard, in terms of our annual report and going around to talk to each of the city council, they each have agreed to and committed to allowing that there will be mandatory training for all city employees on equity. And so we're coming back to city council in a couple of weeks with the ordinance, and so that ordinance will then mandate that all city employees receive training on equity. We have a huge win. We have also participated in the ban the box conversation and presentation to city council. It's gone to city council for a public hearing twice now. It's kind of been slowed down for revisions, but it will be coming back, and it's going to happen. It's just a matter of a couple of questions, legal questions about whether there would be a private right of action, whether we could be allowed to sue for anything individually. The biggest question, obviously, is the timing of when you're allowed to access a criminal conviction. The ordinance initially said it would be at the time of contingent job offer, and businesses don't like that. So they want to be able to do it a little sooner than when there's a job offer contingent upon passing a criminal background check. So that's the conversation, discussion. But long story short, it's going to come back and it will pass in some form of fashion. That will be citywide, with expectations that all city businesses have to adhere. Taxi and Uber. We've been very engaged from the Commission on Disability side, as well as just from the equity side on the conversations around Uber and the taxi issue. It will come for a first public hearing to council next Thursday at 2 o'clock. The Blue Ribbon Panel Commission, whatever they call it, Commissioner Novick has impaneled a commission committee to make recommendations to his office. They meet to finalize those recommendations tomorrow, and those recommendations will then go to city council. I was very clear when I testified that our goal is to ensure that there is equity and that the taxi drivers essentially don't get thrown under the bus, no pun intended. And there's a question of whether that may happen. The idea is to open up licenses so that Uber can have, or Lyft can have as many as they like. And then, oh, we'll just treat everybody equally, therefore all the taxi companies can have all that they like for this pilot period of 3 months. Equity isn't accomplished by treating everybody equally, because those who are driving for Lyft or Uber are doing it not as a way to make their living and pay their rent and feed their families. And so flooding the market, even for the short period of time of 3 months, there will be people who don't survive. So that's a huge piece of the question. And so depending upon the recommendations, we also have to do with accessibility of vehicles that are wheelchair accessible, and how they will require Uber to meet the requirements of the taxi companies that are regulated and have to have a certain percentage. And so that is also a big question. Long story short, I'm waiting to see what the recommendations are, because I'll testify against it if I need to. And I've essentially said that to a couple of commissioners' offices, but we'll see.
Is there, right, just a quick question on that, is there anything, because this is something that I personally have been really bothered by what's going on in the city, and I wonder if you're, I mean, obviously you're on it, but if there's anything that HRC can do to also do our voice as well.
Tomorrow's meeting, I don't know that there's an opportunity to speak because it's just the committee's conversation about the recommendations. The presentation next Thursday is a public hearing, so it could be an opportunity for HRC to review the recommendations that come out tomorrow. So they have to go to council, they have to be filed, so they'll be on the website, if not tomorrow, by Friday. So you'll be able to actually see what the recommendations are. And then you could come and testify regarding whatever position the HRC would like to take on that. But then, so you'll get 2 opportunities for testimony. One is at the public hearing on Thursday, and then the following week is when they'll take, again, testimony and vote on, at least they're expected to vote on the recommendations by the committee.
Do you, Audrey, want to just be able to reflect on those and maybe share your initial response to the position?
I mean, just in brief, my initial thoughts around Uber coming in is that, I recognize that a lot of minorities and immigrants are working as taxi drivers, and that is their sole source of income. And they're individuals who may not have many other job opportunities, and it just kind of takes them out.
And there's also, there's an economic status question to this, because you have to have a smartphone to do it. They don't take cash.
Right.
And my understanding is that the drivers also have an opportunity to comment on passengers on the site, on whatever they have. They can make comments on passengers that could be reflected and read and heard, and I don't know what the ramifications of that could be. So that's a question I have. So, in some sense, it's an economic status question as well. The BMA, the Black Male Achievement Portland, is now being staffed by, we've hired a program coordinator, who's just walked in, Mr. C.J. Robbins is here. He is the new program coordinator in our office. And he started on Monday. He's now sitting where Kenya was, so if you look for Kenya and see somebody different, that's why. And so we're really very, very pleased that CJ has joined the team, and we really think he'll be doing a great job in kind of shepherding the BMA forward.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And then finally, I went to the CPRC meeting, which was, I don't know, 3 weeks ago maybe. And I spoke to the CPRC, and I essentially challenged it to provide an idea of what it wants its outcomes to be. As it relates to the performance indicators that I had mentioned that has been discussed around this table. But CPRC also is a reflection of the HRC broadly because it's a committee of view of this entity. And so this entity will also be evaluated based on what its committees do. And so I challenge the CPRC to decide what it wants its outcomes to be, determine and develop its own sense of performance indicators that are not activity-based, but they're outcome-based. And, decide how it wants to move forward in terms of some of the information that it receives, the STOPS data. What is it going to do with it? Is it planning on redoing the racial profiling plan that's several years old now? So I say that to say I would encourage/challenge this group to have a greater interaction, oversight, and relationship with the CPRC. I think it's tenuous at best from what I can see and understand. And I think that's, it's a shame because the possibilities of them doing great work exist because they've done great work in the past. And I think that there's an opportunity for this body to have a greater relationship with what it does. And certainly Sam is trying to do a great job of directing, hurting some of that. And Damon, obviously, too. But I would just suggest that there's I'm not sure what it is, so I'll challenge you the same way I've challenged it, that there's a strained relationship. And I understand it, because I don't know how many of you were here when I first started and said that I think in some sense there's just a fundamental conflict of interest between this group and that group as it's trying to maintain positive working relationships, and sometimes I don't think can or does speak on issues that might make the police uncomfortable, where this group absolutely has to be able to do that. And you guys have to figure that out. You have to rectify that, be able to have that conversation and decide how you want it to function in relation to this body. So,
I would offer from that, Director, thank you. I think there was an executive committee meeting where conversations around what is happening in the CLEAR committee and what's happening at CPRC be just put under a microscope holistically, so that we can ask ourselves what is the HRC's movement with regards to relationships, recommendations, all these kinds of things with the police. And so, Sam, I know you oftentimes feel like you are holding all of it, just kind of on your shoulders based upon that work, but know that you're not alone. There's lots of folks who are thinking about it, and I think at the end, it's really around how do we make some changes and how do we actually have a clear statement for all those around to also recognize where we would be coming from in action-wise. And so I think that's something that we look forward to. I appreciate that, Director, because I think that's something that we've already been talking about. We've recognized that tenuous relationship, and we look forward to making it something that works for all of us and the city and the folks who look forward to us doing something about it. So thank you for that.
Dante, I was wondering if you had, from your perspective, any recommendations or personal feelings about the types of issues that HRC could be focusing on with the CPRC. The profiling plan, I'm trying to review that and wrap myself around it a little bit more, but I just was wondering if you had any feelings of issues that you'd like to see us pay more attention to.
sure what clear is designed to do, so I'm not sure how those two entities can work together or in some sense of relationship. But, I mean, there are issues, for me, if we're talking about changing a culture, any culture, be it city, state, corporate, it doesn't make a difference. For me, the bookends are recruitment and training. Who are you bringing in, and what are you doing to train them about how you want them to be in relation to the culture you want to provide? And so the police are doing specific work to try to change the process of recruitment and hiring, and they're doing specific work around trying to change culture through training. And so I don't know if this body has any interest in participating in that. The CPRC has been engaged in working with the police on training. I specifically am working with them on their recruitment and their hiring panels and things like that. So, the DOJ settlement agreement you're engaged with. So that's an automatic entree into, at least as it relates to mental health community. The communities of color is a whole different issue that the COAB is, I think, minimally charged with, if at all, just based on the expectations and requirements of the settlement agreement. So that's an area that's not really being addressed specifically. So it may be an opportunity to have a niche that's not really being addressed. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, there's some.
I want to thank you for coming to the meeting, and I think there was some good stuff that you brought up. And since that meeting, we met today, myself and AC Krebs and Pete Simpson and Jeff Selby, and we met to discuss doing a PSA, a public service announcement, and maybe doing some other stuff about outreach and engagement with the community, so people know who we are, where we're at when we're meeting, that kind of thing. We're also going to have a strategic planning meeting next week with myself and Al Warnoy, who's the equity manager for Portland Police, and Krebs, to kind of outline what Dante's talking about. So when we go to a meeting every month, we have real things that we're working on that we want to see an outcome for, right? So we're not just going to meetings to say that we have a CPRC meeting. My goal when I first got on this committee was that 5 years from now, we would see a huge decrease in the statistics of people being stopped. So how do we get there? That's part of, I see CPR's work as getting us to that place where there's a drastic drop in racial profiling, and better relationships and engagement with community members and the police. The difficulty, I think, sometimes is really pushing the police to be uncomfortable. But I'm at that place where I think we have the trust and the relationship where that we need to push them to do a little bit more, to be uncomfortable, and ourselves as well. There's just certain things that we need to do to accomplish to get us where we want to be. I don't have any interest in serving as a chair of a committee just to serve as a chair. When this is done, I want us to actually have made a difference in the culture of the police department and the relationship with the community. So I think when Dante came to talk and pointed out some of the areas where we can improve, it was really beneficial, because I think everybody heard. And rather than sit around and say, well, we didn't agree with that, we're now looking at, okay, well, what do we need to do? This is what we need to do. We need to get together and talk about this. Elle's now coming on, so we're going to be able to work with her. Damon's done a lot of wonderful work on that committee, and kind of just getting together, brainstorming, putting together a plan for the next year to 2 years and what that's going to look like. So I'm optimistic that that's going to happen, but the actions will speak louder than words. So I do thank you for coming and saying what you said. And I think also we have to have the HRC and the CPRC clear. We have to fix that, whatever it is that we have,
be on the same page.
We'll have to be on the same page, and I think our emotions and our feelings get, you know, I understand the community's distrust for the police, and I understand the police feeling for the community, but how do I'm trying to be solution-based. How do we move past that? How do we change that? How do we build on it? Do we always want to have that, or do we want to move past it, and what is it gonna take? Even the littlest things that we can get to move forward. And I think we have a lot of good people in the room and on the committee. I know the police officers that are there because they're committed. They don't wanna just be there. That's how I feel, so.
This is a really important topic and it's been ongoing, and it feels to me like, we're really ready to dive in, into figuring all these things out. I do need to give us a time check, we're a bit behind. So I would suggest that we figure out how to have that conversation, pretty much supported by the forward movement that it sounds like CPRC is doing, and it sounds like CLEAR could do a better job of getting the work we did in terms of defining because it went out early, but it sounds like it needs to be perhaps published online, and so the newcomers also understand what the difference is between CLEAR and CPRC, is to get that all very visible and on the table, and we can figure out how can we redesign the structure as it is now, so there's more fluidity and functionality between the two roles.
I want to say one, if you don't mind if I say one last. So the race talks that we've been doing with Maxine, when we go to those, there's members from the CPRC and the HRC there, and the police in the community. And it seems to be functioning fairly well with the relationships so I thank the HRC members that have been coming to those and been involved and helping us to have those that function. So if we can build off of what we have there, which I think is a good thing, for the most part, I think it would be good.
So I'm actually just gonna challenge us to not be afraid to, I'm gonna say blow stuff up, but I don't really mean that, especially on camera. I think if we were to, just a step away strategic meeting with all members of CLEAR and CPRC, or at least leadership of these groups, and also Sonji and Emmanuel by way of the DOJ, to really map out what does it look like for HRC to make movement here, because it may not look like CLEAR and CPRC and engagement on collab. It may look like one giant thing. We've heard of different models, and so I really would challenge us to not feel like we need to continue to push just inside of those two things. And so I look forward to some sort of strategic meeting, and maybe doing what you need to do to carry on with business, but I think if we can get something pretty rapid, hopefully like maybe before, we're able to run one right now, so if we can get something before the end of April to even sit down and really like put our minds, wrap our minds around what does it look like to not have these two, and just have one movement, one cohesive movement with multiple tactics, then let's look at what that could be.
For the sake of time, can we just set that meeting up now?
How about a little edit to that suggestion? Would you like to get that rolling offline?
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you, Dante.
I'd say,
Sorry.
for the Uber thing, there was a story today about, in relation to public safety context. I was wondering if that's even a part of that conversation, along with economic opportunities. There's a national story about someone going back up to dropping someone off, and
There've been some.
yeah, so I was hoping that's a part of that conversation too.
I don't know to what extent. I know there's been conversation about, cameras in vehicles versus Uber knows the driver's name and the passenger's name, therefore they have all the information they need for safety purposes. There's a big difference between a camera and having your name written somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's all, but I know there's been a conversation around the safety concerns that are running Uber. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dante.
We'll get some more coffee.
Save a little bit, will ya?
You better hurry up.
This is what happens when you